All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. As always, we're recording late Sunday evening. We're going to talk about a couple of baseball awards markets, both the Cy Young markets after injuries to Spencer Strider and Shane Bieber. We'll talk NBA, just reactions to the weekend. And looks like we will have Clippers Mavs in the first round and talk a little bit about that. And then we'll talk about the national championship game at the end. But Drew, how's your weekend?
It was lovely. All things sports was fine. Hit the under in the Purdue game to start off the Final Four head-to-heads. Came home and the UConn team total got over by the hook. So counting my blessings for that one. And in general, the NBA results were pretty favorable. It is like wild west right now watching the NBA and hold on for dear life in a couple of positions that I got involved heavily at the end of the season. And I mean the Magic keep doing magic things. It's great. I love to see these wins. If the Suns had come through for me today against the Pelicans, we would be dancing a jig tonight. But alas, we need more high leverage games for the Pelicans to go against them in the next couple of days, as we round out the NBA season. The playoff picture is very murky right now with the NBA, especially in the West.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But before we do, the end of the Heat Pacers game, because I'm also very invested in the Magic. Just ridiculous stuff. Pascal Siakam putting his hand on Tyler Hero's his hip just during his shooting motion to get three free throws. Ridiculous deep three from Hero, and then very anticlimactic how they just butchered the intentional missed free throw at the end to thankfully blow that. So now the Magic, I mean, it looked like it was done before they lost to the Hornets, and Franz Wagner is hurt. So I don't think it's done, but it's pretty close now. They're up 3 games with 4 to play. Now, admittedly, all 4 of the Magic's games are pretty hard. So, and the Heat play the Raptors twice. But I think so long as the Heat drop one of their next 2, we should be okay. But I'm not going to lock that one in until it's absolutely done.
I mean, the good news for the Magic is they play the Bucks twice, and the Bucks aren't trying. What is going on with the Bucks right now? Is this literally like they're literally just going to pull the rug on the regular season because they need to get healthy? I'm blown away by how poor they're performing.
Yeah, it's strange. Well, we'll get to that in a second. I think by the time we get through Cy Young, that game should go final. Bucks Knicks. As I'm looking right now, the Knicks are up 12 with 7 minutes to go. So, minus 1,600 on the money line. So it should be done, but you never know. The Pacers were much more favored than minus 1,600 on the money line at one point, and then really tried to give it away. But let's talk about the NL and AL Cy Young markets, which are both. Well, certainly the NL market was thrown into chaos when Spencer Strider, some sorts was like plus 350 to win the award. And he goes down. Shane Bieber goes down as well in the AL, who was, if you held the vote after 2 starts, he may well have won and was rightfully one of the top 5 favorites. But both of these markets now thrown into a little bit of chaos. And I think the main thing is just not so much that the injury to Bieber, like Bieber was, 5 to 7% chance to win the award. So it doesn't shift a ton of equity. Strider's loss does, but I think most of all, Drew, it's just a reminder that like these markets, as much as they are about talent and projected performance, with pitching, it's just as much about attrition and the idea that like any of these guys could go down at any given moment.
Yeah, and I think the Bieber one is of note because the winds were swirling with the start that the Tigers had. And if Bieber had been healthy for the Guardians, was there a big old bet to be made on Cleveland to win the AL? Yeah, maybe. And now without Bieber involved, I think you pretty much have to draw a line through that. Appreciate that they gave us the heads up on that before any of us bet big money on the Cleveland Guardians to win the AL Central. But so it goes. Ultimately, the idea that Skubal goes wire to wire here, Not gonna happen. I would throw sincere objection to the idea that Scooball is going to be able to pitch this well for the duration of the season. So this is time to, I think, really shop in this market and find the right angle. I don't have it for us today. Certainly, maybe you have some candidates to pitch in terms of some Cy Young winners, but the AL Cy Young right now looks like here's the feeling I get. I almost feel bad for whoever has to make prices for this market right now because this is chaos. Like this could go in 200 directions between now and the end of the season, and the idea that you have to hang fares is almost feels unfair. So yeah, there's some big numbers that are going to get much shorter between now and All-Star break, and we got to find this.
Yeah, I think so with both of these markets, particularly with the AL, there have been for years, these markets were weighed down by a superstar kind of anchoring the top of the market, whether it was peak Clayton Kershaw or Justin Verlander or Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer for stretches naturally. And now we don't have really anyone anchoring either of these markets. I think rightfully the shortest favorite across the two markets is Zach Wheeler. And I think he is kind of right now, he's almost like tier one by himself, which is weird because Zach Wheeler is a great pitcher, but it's not like Zach Wheeler is like an all-time great. And I feel like he is the best healthy pitcher in baseball right now, perhaps by margin. Well, at least him and Corbin Burns. I don't understand why Tariq Skubal is the favorite in the AL. I understand that when he has been out there, he has been terrific. But I mean, the past 2 years, he's thrown 117 and 80 innings for the Tigers. He's 27 years old. This is effectively his fourth season as like a full-time starter. He's had injury issues. He's really good. And sure, he's as likely as many of these other guys are. But I think I would have Corbin Burns the favorite in the AL. In the NL, I would have Wheeler the favorite with more separation than he's got to these other guys like Peralta and Zach Gallen. Zach Gallen, by the way, is a massive stay away. He has some huge underlying red flags with his velocity, and he is kind of fluked, I think, these first couple of starts. Logan Webb got bashed around, and Logan Webb's just like the guy who kind of finishes third. It feels like his ceiling, even though he finished second last year, I'm not sure that he has the strikeout and just kind of upside to justify being 12-1 after getting shelled. So I think the main thing with both of these markets is that they just need to be a lot flatter than they are currently. Like Kevin Gausman can't be plus 900. Like he got absolutely rocked at Yankee Stadium and dug himself a bit of a hole. So I think both of these markets are going to be ripe for long shots. I don't think they've necessarily emerged yet, but these are the two. I think these are the two most interesting awards markets in baseball now.
Yeah. And the AL one is tougher in my mind to price than the NL one. But the NL one actually is probably the more mispriced because so many guys at or near the top are huge red flags for either injury or performance. The red flag guys, you mentioned Zach Allen. I was going to bring him up. I'm glad you mentioned it. The red flags are very real. There are whispers of injury questions around Aaron Nola. He may be the next guy that we see to take an extended absence. And if you believe Glasnow is going to pitch a full, healthy complement of innings this year, then I got a lovely piece of property out in California City that I'd be happy to sell to you because it's not California City. Sounds lovely, right? It's not. But yeah, no, Glasnow, he can't be anywhere close. Yeah, Gallen, Glasnow, and Nola can't be anywhere close to the top of this with the way that these guys are playing and just in general questions about health. So yeah, there's going to be a big old price that comes in both of these markets, and I hope we can get them before they turn into 5-1s.
Yeah, what I am hoping for as a bettor is that one of the elite kind of marquee guys gets really rocked early without like health concerns. Like they just have a couple of bad outings. Like I would love for Zach Wheeler to get shelled or Corbin Burns or Valdez, one of these guys to just drift out to 30-1. But I think it's going to be a field where, you can have a bad start and get back into it because I don't think there is I mean, someone could just ride positive, like good variance and run away with it. But I don't think there's anyone terrifying that's going to have a Jacob deGrom sub-2 ERA type of season, most likely.
Mhm.
All right, let's talk about the NBA. As we were pouring dirt on the Bucks, the Knicks have pulled away again. The Bucks did get within 6 with 5 minutes left. Now the Knicks are pulling away a little bit. But what were your biggest takeaways out of the weekend?
Yeah, the bottom of the West is still there's still chaos to unfurl, I think, and tonight's result in LA is, I think, going to be pretty massive. Timberwolves play the Lakers. We do not know how that will go prior to recording this, so just a little FYI. The Lakers flipped the Kings. They're in the 8th seed, and we kind of teased this on the front end of the weekend. If the Lakers and the Warriors are not playing in the 9-10, and those two teams each have a chance to get in as the 7th and 8th respectively, that changes the entire dynamic, the entire paradigm of how you want to price the West. It seems to me very likely right now that the Nuggets are just going to be the 1 seed. I know that, again, like if the Timberwolves win, then, walk all of this backwards because you'll have a dead tie at the top with the T-Wolves having the tiebreak over the Nuggets, albeit they have one more head-to-head in Denver where the Denver Nuggets are going to be 6.5, 7-point favorites. That said, I think Nuggets will ultimately walk away with the Northwest and win the West, and I have bet accordingly. I think the Timberwolves and the Thunder look, or at least the Timberwolves don't look likely to really change direction in terms of available personnel between now and the end of the regular season. I don't think we're going to see Karl-Anthony Towns until later in April. And the Thunder they really pulled the ripcord. I didn't see that coming. They basically have elected to take a ton of rest opportunity for some of their key players. And while in general, I like the way that has led to some renewed confidence for Josh Giddey in terms of how they will look as a playoff team. But it also surprises me in terms of just, well, what do we expect from Shea and Jalen Williams right now? And those are huge, unanswered questions. And I think ultimately, if right now it looks like the Oklahoma City is probably going to slide into the 3 pretty comfortably. They can't go any lower. And at that point, you're going to draw the 6th seed, which might be the Pelicans, might be the Kings, might be most likely the Suns. And I think ultimately the Thunder probably, I don't know. I think they should have tried a little harder for the 1 seed. What do you think?
I think there's this idea that, the Thunder have given up a little bit, and maybe they are just being conservative. I also think that if you just look at Shea's timeline, like I think this is probably a real injury where he hurt himself. He was pretty bad for a week by his standards, came back for 1 game. Now in that 1 game, which is one of the best games of the season, the Thunder against the Knicks in the Garden. Now he hit the game winner, but he also didn't really play well that game. And it was Jalen Williams going 14 of 18 who won the game for them before Shea hit the shot at the end. But he didn't look great in that game. And then to miss time again and then subsequently be sent home on a road trip. Like, that's not really what happens if a guy is just being kind of held out because of, the Celtics. The injury reports of the Celtics is just an absolute joke. It's like, all right, let's just make up a random injury for some guy and just hold him out.
Right.
Derek White's just randomly sitting out games, which is fine. But I don't think that's what's going on with Oklahoma City. I think that they probably know that Shea isn't right. And I don't think it's that serious, but probably can't play to his full potential at the moment. And they figure that, all right, well, if we're the 3 seed, Denver is likely the 1. So it's fine just sitting in the 3 seed and not that scary going to Minnesota in the 2nd round, if that is the matchup. And I think that on top of that, Jalen Williams is probably, he's probably a little bit hurt, and they're just being conservative because Shea is out as well. So I think ultimately the Wolves losing to the Suns has probably shaped the 1 seed race where now the Nuggets, like the 1 seed really is going to hinge on Denver. Denver basically winning us 8-point favorites home to Minnesota. And if they take care of business in that game, it's likely done, because the other 3 games, I mean, if you are trying, you can just choose to beat the Utah Jazz and the Memphis Grizzlies. Like, you can just automatically walk into those games. They aren't NBA teams at the moment. Now, at San Antonio might be a little bit fun. That would be the only other realistic banana skin, but I think that we're going to get the Nuggets in the one most likely, and they will probably in the second round face the Clippers or the Mavs, which seems to be really coalescing as the 4-5. Clippers Mavs round 3, part 3, given that they played in the bubble and then they played in that epic 7-game series where the Clippers lost the first 2 games at home, and then the Mavs were up like 30-8 in game 3, and then the Clippers came storming back. How would you price that matchup, assuming that Kawhi is back and healthy?
Man, this is so tough, man. This one's the toughest. And I guess the fact that this is the only one we know is likely coming down the pipe is a good thing, because we get our time to really kind of chew on this one. But we literally have 0 data to go on of how these two teams as currently constituted match up. All 3 matchups between the Mavericks and the Clippers happened in December and November. Sorry, I had it up a minute ago, but November 10th they played in the in-season tournament, and this was like in the direct shadow of the James Harden trade. The Clippers were just a weird kind of mess of themselves as they ultimately have come to be, and they got blown out by the Mavericks in the in-season tournament round robin game. They then came storming back later in November to bury the Mavericks at home, and then ultimately won on the road December 20th. And why I say that we don't have much data to go on, none of these 3 games were Mavericks, like they just weren't the team that they are now. And the Clippers are not the team that they are now, as they were kind of figuring themselves out, particularly in the early 2 matchups there. So we don't have a sense of exactly how end of game is going to play out between these 2 teams. And I think right now the Mavericks are an interesting case because their offense and in general, the pace of play, like everything speaks to this run they've been on making perfect sense, right? Like they have played fast, they've played efficient. Kyrie Irving is cooking. Like, the usage of the bigs with Luka has been, hand in glove. Like all of that has married perfectly with the fact that they're playing a lot of teams that aren't really trying to win basketball games because we're at the end of the season. And so I think there's a little bit of fool's gold potential in what we've got data-wise for this Mavericks team on this run currently. And you saw it in a game like today where the Mavericks slept walk through the first 10 minutes of that game. Like that was not a competitive effort from that group at all. But they knew they could get away with it. And then they tried playing later, and then they came back, and then they ultimately win in overtime. And I don't think you walk away from that feeling super strong or great about this Mavericks team. I mean, they are brimming with confidence, surely. Like they have got to love the way that their roster is complementing each other, particularly their closing lineups. But I am still holding on to a glimmer of hope that the Clippers that we saw when they were one of the best teams in the NBA in end of January, that team could still manifest come playoff time. And the reason that I think you hold out a little bit more hope for the Clippers is just I don't think the Kawhi Leonard injury stuff and his missing time is a real injury. I think they're literally just trying to keep him as fresh as possible. I don't think that there's really much of a question about Paul George's effectiveness come playoff time. There's been people who have been asking, like, man, if he's not being given, the green light, if he's not like the featured guy, is he just a little too passive, and does that negatively impact them? No, not really. Like I think come playoff time, he's exactly the type of player that you want to be able to call on, at specifically at sporadic times throughout a game and throughout a series to be the alpha guy. And then James Harden, of course, does not look any worse for wear in terms of like his physical state right now. So he looks healthy, he looks engaged. I think he's going to be fine. The bigger question is mostly just like, did something happen to Zubac? Did he get hurt and we don't know about it? Is because his effectiveness has been a huge question mark in the last month. And I can't believe that I'm even saying this, but like, if you're like, man, are the Clippers just not trying? Is that their issue? Or is it literally just that they don't have a lot of big options, and the big options that they have are either playing underwhelming in terms of rim protection, or just are dealing with injuries and they're not telling us? Then, that could explain it. But if I think if the Clippers, the real Clippers, show up and stand up, you're probably looking at a Clippers minus 140 in terms of a series price. Decent favorites at home and pick'ems on the road. Has kind of the spirit that I think we'll ultimately see the market give us. But there's going to be some serious trepidation where if the Clippers get beat early in that series, there's going to be an aggressive flip.
Yeah, I think I might just take the Mavericks in that series odds agnostic with what both these teams have shown over the past couple of months. I think that the Clippers, their issue is that, one, Kawhi just has fallen off a little bit, and maybe it was the knee. He just seems to have nights where he just doesn't have lift on his jumper, and
Sure.
I know he's mixed in good games as well. Paul George has been hurt back and forth, was dealing with injury coming out of All-Star. Harden has really, I think, fallen off, and I think they bizarrely missed Westbrook when he was out to a large extent, and they're just like, at the moment they're just playing these guys who just aren't good. Like PJ Tucker shouldn't be playing. Amir Coffey's not good. Terrence Mann, everyone thinks is like a 3-and-D guy, except he doesn't really defend and he can't shoot threes. So I've never understood what does Terrence Mann actually do outside of rain fire over Rudy Gobert in a playoff game. And then Norm Powell, who we love, but Norm Powell, like if Norm Powell is in your closing lineup, like every night, basically, I'm not sure that's the best thing. Where Powell, yes, excellent offensive player with his shooting and his gravity, and he attacks the rim, but defensively he's a sieve. And then to your point, Zubats has fallen off as well. So I just don't think that they're the level of team they were when was it 26-5 or whatever that run was they were on, and their underlying stuff was never quite that good either. In that run, they were excellent, but not to that level. And meanwhile, Dallas, Luka has shown that his game scales very well in the playoffs. Irving is magnificent. Gafford has been playing great. Then get Lively back, then all of a sudden they're pretty deep in competence around the two stars. My man Dante Exum has been great. He's handling the ball at end of games, and obviously hit the buzzer beater against Houston. And he's taking those shots and he's making them at a decent enough clip when he is left wide open, which he is quite frequently. So I think that the Mavs, just the way that it is all set up for them now, and so the Clippers have won 6 of 7. They have the least momentum of all time for a team that has won 6 out of 7 games and has just gotten to 50 and 28. So I don't know. What's your apprehension about the Mavs?
I just worry that we're seeing it so late. And is it real? The idea that it's happened this late. And I know that their acquisitions at the trade deadline really, like, they have set this up, right? Getting Gafford, getting PJ Washington, like, these were all-in moves. At the time, when they made the moves, it's like, okay, well, that'll get you into the 7 seed. You can host a play-in game. Good job, guy. Whoa, cool. Now you're clearly the 5. It's not entirely out of the possibility that you get the 4. And you're playing a lot better. But it's come at the end of the season, and in a lot of cases, like today against the Rockets, where the Rockets really trying to win that game. I don't know. There's some questions here about how the end of the season has really looked for the Mavericks, and if you're telling me like, hey, you got to trust a team that does have some serious flaws defensively with their most important player who's got to be on the floor for 40 minutes, then I think ultimately, there's some serious questions to be asked about Kyrie Irving being, as effective in the playoff situation as he has been recently. And I'm saying this while also completely and fairly acknowledging that James Harden has been on a 20-game slide. It has been at least 2 months since we've seen him play anywhere close to as effective as he needs to be as effective as he needs to be for the Clippers to be a realistic title contender. But I also think that the James Harden we know and love is want to pack it in when things don't really matter, and things haven't really mattered in a while for the Clippers. So yeah, I know it's very tough to trust either of these teams.
Yeah, I agree. I just think that the Mavs have, it's weird to say because the Clippers seemingly had as much upside as anyone outside of Boston and Denver for so long, but I think the Mavs might now have, might be that team just because there are reasons to believe why the change is substantive, where, there's players on these, like Gafford has never played on a real team, and now he's playing with Luka Doncic, and he has a very defined role. This is what I always liked about the really good Harden Rockets teams, is that I think that certain players in those type of heliocentric ecosystems just become significantly better when your roles and your tasks are just very kind of streamlined. Like Daniel Gafford, there's not that many things he needs to do, but the things that he does need to do in terms of play defense and just roll to the rim and be a lob threat, he does very well. Lively is similar. Exum is in the perfect spot. It's like the guys like Trevor Ariza. Like if all you need to do is stand in the corner and defend, and you're not asked to do too much because Irving and Luka can do so much. Now, I still think that Irving and Doncic, their skill sets there is an inherent issue where they are a little bit redundant, but I think that's going to be like what Luka Doncic deals with is for his entire career. Like there's always going to be, he's going to need to have a second ball handler next to him if he wants to win a title. And there's always going to be just the redundancy there because of the fact that Luka just doesn't do anything off ball. He doesn't cut. He doesn't move. Ben Taylor did a really good video on Doncic and some of his flaws, but also his strengths. So they're a weird team, but I think that with the way that Luka has shown he can scale in the playoffs and just how resilient his kind of play type is to the playoffs, I think that this team has a bit more juice than maybe others suspect.
Okay. Your 2 quick points. You brought up a very good kind of key, which is Doncic has proven it in the playoffs, like particularly the Sun series where they punched their ticket to the Western Conference Finals. That was a masterclass. Getting, that they were what, I don't know, off the top of my head, like 6-1 to win that series at the start. And the first 2 games, it looked like that was going to be a non-compete. And the fact that they clawed their way back was in large part due to Luka singularly. Now, Luka is interesting because he's been a minus defensive player forever. Like he just is. Like he's very, very, very smart. Like his basketball IQ might be higher than almost anyone else outside of LeBron James. And that I think makes up for some things that are going on with him defensively. And what I kind of can't buy as real that I'm seeing in the data right now is Luka's defensive impact being as great as it is. And I feel like, okay, well done for the last 20 games of the regular season when all of these other teams you're playing are either in turmoil or tanking. Now his defensive effort is showing up. Like that's going to carry through to the playoffs. Like, are you seeing anything fundamentally with his game, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, that tells you that this is a new Luka, or is this going to be like, one-way traffic again once we get to the playoffs?
It's funny. I just think he's such a similar player to peak Harden, even though it looks different. And Luka is, I think, like the assist numbers are probably fairly comparable. Harden's numbers might even be better, but I think Luka is a much, much better passer than Harden. Harden was always very like scientific, like, all right, I'm going to move here, this guy will rotate, and then I'll just whip a pass to the corner. Doncic is much more of a kind of a magician and an artist with the angles that he sees. But I think they're, and obviously, everyone just stands around and kind of watches them while they're doing their thing on offense. And I think on defense, it's the same thing where they have the same archetype where, they look unengaged a lot of the regular season. But in the playoffs, when they're actually switched on, one, they're both kind of massive and really strong. They both have really good size for their position. They both have good hands, good steals guys, and they're both really smart and they know where to be. I'll never forget the Sixers Heat series. the year that Embiid missed the first couple games and came back with the mask and wasn't really himself, James Harden was Philly's primary assignment on Jimmy Butler in terms of guarding him. They just didn't have anyone else. And it's like, oh, Harden's just, he's smart and he'll be able to figure it out somewhat. And I think Doncic isn't going to be the primary assignment on Jimmy Butler anytime soon, but I don't think he's like a massive liability just because he is smart and he's big and he's kind of puts his body in the right places. So I think that, look, I don't think they have the ceiling of an elite defense, but they have the ceiling of like best offense ever. And their defense, I think, can be, perfectly passable.
Okay. All right. Two minuses on the floor at all times with that defense it's not going to get it done. But if Luka can play close to neutral and or good defensively the way he has been over particularly the last 15 games, then yeah, you're talking about potentially title, at least Western Conference title contending.
Yep. No, I think I think there is something with this team. I'd certainly be rather backing the Mavs at 12-1 to win the West than backing the Suns at 10-1 or the Wolves or even the Wolves at 11-1.
Strong agree.
Yeah. All right. This Saturday, the Premier League continues on NBC when Bruno Fernandes and Manchester United look to keep pace in the top half of the table when they face Bournemouth. Match starts at 12:30 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock. All right, national championship game, Drew. Has March Madness been kinder to you lately?
Yeah, well, thankfully. Couldn't have been worse, Jay. After that first weekend, it couldn't have gotten worse. And it actually has gone fine. The biggest bet I had on was under in the Purdue game. And that was a rocking chair winner. I feel stupid not playing the alt unders in that one, honestly, because I don't think we got within 25 points of the close there. But the under came through. That was good. And UConn's team total got home by the hook, which I needed, but still was felt like that should have been a little bit more comfortable. Ultimately, I think there's a little bit of a bet to be had here on Purdue, and I honestly don't think that I have ever bet on Purdue with Zach Edey. Like the Zach Edey Purdue, like I would have to search hard through my entire history of bets to find an example where I was like, yeah, these guys tonight, they got it. That said, 6.5 points is absurd. Like there is no way UConn is that much better than this Purdue team. And, can UConn win and cover? Obviously. Like this is still college basketball and the better team, being able to run away and hide at the end of a game. Like you saw it last year. We've seen it many times before where it's just the experience and the talent weighs out and UConn has it. That said, the true difference between these two teams is somewhat closer to 2.5 to 3 points. I expected before we got to this point in the tournament that we were going to see something like 3.5. The fact that it's 6.5 is just building in an absolute obscene amount of recency bias around UConn. Just in general, the matchup that everybody's going to be just, that is frothing at the mouth to see is what does Klingon look like against Zach Edey, blah, blah, blah. The much more important matchup is surely what's happening at the perimeter. How is UConn defending the perimeter? They're an okay perimeter defensive team. Certainly not quite as, this isn't as dangerous a shooting team as Alabama was, Purdue that is, but they're very, very good. So I think UConn is on upset alert here. Not dying to get involved in Purdue with the money line at plus 240, but I don't think this is a fair market at all.
Okay. And what do you think about the total, which is 145.5? I've had a couple of people message me who are more informed on this subject than I am, saying they like the under.
Yeah, I agree with that. I have 141, but then again, like it was such a slam dunk win with Purdue against NC State that I don't entirely want to incidentally give that back because there's something I'm missing about this particular matchup and the fact that it might be a little bit more free flowing in the first half. But all that said, I think the angle is just Boilermakers plus the points.
Okay, Boilermakers and the Under. Well, yeah, if you've got 4.5 points under, then you better be playing the under as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got it 4.5 points under, and I'm off the side by 3.5 points, basically.
Okay.
I would have made this closer to 3.
Okay. There you go. Boilermakers and the under. All right. Don't forget to check out NBCsports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those of you watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Also, remember to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, we'll see you tomorrow.